Okay, gentlemen, we're ready to start. Had a little technical difficulty on my end, but we are all set and ready to go. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us in this great opportunity for the exchange of information, for sharing, for acquiring knowledge and information. The topic of our session today is creative community-based movement for stable housing. And we heard this morning from the onset that we are in a housing crisis in this country. And this phenomenon, this social phenomenon is more acute within the population of returning citizens, those who have had a period of incarceration in our prisons and jails, not only in Ohio, but across the country. So I am pleased to have with me today a panel of experts. And listen when I tell you, these individuals are experts in their area, and they're going to share with us some of their insights, their collective learning, and we're going to explore how we can build momentum to address this pressing social phenomena. So without further ado, let me just jump right in. First, I'm Mike Davis. I serve as the Religious Services Administrator for the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction. I'd like to welcome all of you who are joining virtually, and for those who are in the 5 physical locations, welcome to this great discussion opportunity. You will notice that we have a fairly large panel, so please know that any questions or comments that you have, please put those in the chat, and I will make sure to weave those into the discussion as appropriate. In addition to that, if you want to have a conversation beyond this session, you can reach out to the speakers through the Hoover platform. It's one of the great aspects of this particular technology. So let's just jump right in, and we're going to ask each of our panelists to just give us a brief overview of who you are, to introduce yourself to all of our panelists today and those who will watch this taping in posterity for years to come. No pressure, guys, but potentially tens and hundreds of thousands of people will see your work here. No pressure. So let's start here with Bill Horning. Bill, introduce yourself to the audience today.
My name is Bill Horning. I'm the president and CEO of an organization called Reach Success. We're based in Cleveland, Ohio, with pretty strong reach throughout the state of Ohio, and looking to expand into other territories. We have a very, very strong reentry focus in Ohio. Anything from workforce development to obviously housing. We'll talk about that a little bit later as far as our reach for that. But also kind of personal, is near and dear to me because I went through the system. So I kind of understand what the struggles are, going through the system, coming out of the system, and all the barriers that you have to go through in order to try and get stable and successful again.
Bill, thanks for sharing, and thank you for being a part of this panel. Now let's move to Mr. Brian Urbanski. Brian, say hello to our audience.
Hey, Mike, and hello, everybody out there. It's great to be here, and it's really great to be among this distinguished panel. I am the founder and owner of Aubrey Homes and the Aubrey Supportive Housing Foundation. We have been an affordable housing provider in the Central Ohio area for about 20 years. And although we are very welcoming to justice-involved and reentry individuals today, I do have a confession to make. It wasn't always that way. For the first 13 years, we didn't. And then we had an aha moment that really changed the trajectory of our business. And I think I'll share more about that later in the conversation.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Williams.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rick Williams. I am the Recovery and Housing Manager for Truly Reaching You, Inc. We're located in Summit County, Akron. We do housing for men who are coming either from the inside or who are coming from the streets who are having issues with alcohol and or substance use disorders. We also have employment skills training to help men better, get the training needed to be in the workforce here in Summit County. I'm also a 4-time guest of the Ohio penal system, so I have the live experience also and know the difficulties it is coming from the inside.
All right. Thank you very much. And Tommy Moore.
Hey, Mike. Hey to our guests and participants today. Let me express a special word of thanks to Reba and her team. What an incredible presentation today. You guys have done an amazing job, so thank you. And thank you, Michael, for setting up the time to do this today. I have the incredible honor of serving Jumpstart USA as its president. Jumpstart is a whole continuum of care. We both do reentry services on the inside and then offer assistance on the outside. Currently in 5 states, South Carolina, Ohio, North Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama, and looking forward to our time together today.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. So let's just jump in with both feet. Let's get into the deep end. And Rick, I'm gonna just start with you, and I'm gonna ask you just plainly, what do you think the number one problem facing us today relative to providing housing for our returning neighbors?
I think is educating our community. Public perception is the main thing. Is, you know, the negative stereotypes of people who are coming home from incarceration, and you know, we want to say people paid their dues to society, but you know that's not the reality of it. Because if you paid your dues, then you should be able to have the same benefits that everyone else has in society, or the same, you know, normal things that everybody else are afforded to do, like housing. It has gotten where, you know, to go to scripture, you know, coming out from incarceration, especially when it comes to certain offenses like sex offenses and drug trafficking, because a lot of homeowners are scared for someone to be, you know, making meth in their homes. So they have to do a lot of rehab once that is done, if that's found out. So you have a lot of things that's almost like nowadays leprosy, you know, where a lot of people don't want those, you know, individuals who have those type of charges in their communities or in their homes.
Okay. Hey, Rick, thank you very much. And let me just it's a honor to be a part of this panel, because I know so the experience and the knowledge that exists with this group. And so let's dig in a little deeper. Brian, I want to ask you a question, but first I want to say I've just really being conscious about our words and terminology. I really like the fact that you've moved from landlord to housing provider. And I think that's significant. So I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about that shift, and build upon what you sort of alluded to, that you weren't always a second chance housing provider, but now you are.
Well, thanks, Mike. I think words mean things. And I think that just especially in our justice involved community, you know, we in the housing community, we really have, you know, our interests are very much aligned with society's interests. You know, we want to provide a service, we want to support our customers, and that's really what our residents are. And when we use terms like landlord and tenant, I mean, that's from the Middle Ages. I mean, we're in the 21st century right now, and I like to think that as a society and a culture, we're growing. And I think that when we look at the relationships that we have with each other in society, those terms need to evolve and they need to change as well. And I would even go so far as to say in the 21st century, we need to have a paradigm shift in the housing provider community, of which I'm a part of, in which I am sadly to say, you know, for 13 years of the 20-year history I have, I was not friendly and welcoming towards justice involved individuals, meaning that if that box was checked on the application that there was a criminal background, it would be instant fail. And I'm embarrassed about that, but I have amended my evil ways. And the reason I did was because I had a justice involved individual approach us about renting a property that we had. And I said, no, I'm not, you know, our company policy is that we don't do that. And he called back about a week later, and my wife handles our intake, and she talked to him and heard a little bit of his story, and she put him through to me a second time. I talked a second time to him and said that, I really don't think this is a good idea. I'm concerned that you're going to, what you've done in the past may come back into my property. I don't want either the activity or maybe friends and associates that you have. That was the stereotype, the stigma that I was plagued with in my view of people that have come out of the system. And I said, I think that's a bad idea, but thank you, I appreciate it. Then he tried one more time. About a week later, he said that he talked to my wife again, and again, she put him through, and I'm glad she did. That's why she's the boss, to be honest with you. And we had a long conversation. He explained, he said, you've taken my call 3 times, and I appreciate that. Everyone else that I've talked to has flat out told me no, and most of the time they don't take my call at all. And I want to thank you for that. And the fact that he showed respect to me was huge. And right then and there, he was showing me that maybe I was not giving him a fair chance. And we talked about it, and I was still concerned because I had that bias. And that's one of the things that I'm working to change in the community. I'm trying to be like a liaison and an ambassador of sorts towards to the affordable housing community and friends that I know, almost like a grassroots effort to get more of my friends and more of my colleagues supporting our justice involved residents and people that are coming home. And we talked, and I said, well, I'll tell you what, here's what I'm going to do. I'm still nervous about this, but I will go ahead and I'll let you in. I do want an additional security deposit, and I'm going to charge you a little bit more rent because I'm afraid that maybe like Rick said, not that he had drug charges, but I said, I don't want to have to remediate a meth lab situation or something like that. And honestly, that was a little rude of me. I don't look back on that with fondness, but that was the place I was at then. Long story short, I brought him in. He was a great resident. We've had since then, because of our experience with him, we no longer have that checkbox. I mean, we have the checkbox, but we no longer say you can't come in. We say, go ahead and tell us your story. And we've had many residents since then, and I'm very happy to say they've all been good experiences with us. And it was not just a good society decision, it was a good business decision for us to make. And when you have a clientele, a customer base that pays their rent on time and takes care of their property and is a good neighbor, that's all we want to have. I mean, the number one reason that housing providers don't work with justice involved individuals is simply because of risk management. Even with people with good credit scores in today's economy can still lose their job. It's all about risk management. And I think that in many cases, returning citizens can be lower risk.
Yeah. Hey, thank you. Sorry about that, guys. My system dropped me. It's just so much knowledge and information that my system couldn't carry it all. Bill, let me just ask you briefly. We go way back. I know about Reach Reach Success Inc. and your years of work in this arena. Let me just ask you, why is housing such an important part of the success or potential success of individuals who are returning back to the community? Why is it such an integral part of our reentry stories?
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate the question. Yeah, it's great to see you. It's been a while, since we first connected. It's kind of interesting, I think the phrase that kind of sums up the best description of reentry housing is this: where you want to live, you can't. And where you can live, you don't want to. And that's probably the best way to describe what everybody faces coming home from prison, trying to find a place to live. And really what we've seen, we were in the prisons all over Ohio all the time, kind of similar to what Tommy does. And what we see is, in order to put together a reentry plan coming home, if there's not stable housing, nothing's going to work. That's where the recidivism rate goes through the roof. It's really all about the housing piece, because if you can't find something stable to live, and not only just stable housing, but in an environment that you should be in, not an environment that you can be in. And we'll get into this later too, Mike, I know, with follow-up questions, but some initiatives we've done in order to change that. But that becomes the integral piece of a successful reentry plan, is having a stable place to live where you need to get lift. And that's not going back to your mom's house or going back to your neighborhood. It's going to a whole separate place that you can start a whole new life again without the same triggers that you had before. In order to do that, you've got to be able to have those options. So, for example, from my standpoint, when I came home, back in 2016, $8 to my name, no family, no friends, basically lived on the streets, 14 different couches in a year, just trying to find a place. Nobody would rent to me, they wanted to, but, in Brian's case, they didn't want to take a chance on me, or they always use the excuse, well, my insurance won't let me do it. So there's always some reason. So it became really hard for that first year, just trying to find a way to make it. And I didn't have an arson charge or a sex charge or anything else. I had a theft charge. So it wasn't like I was, on the front end of something they don't want to look at, period. Now I have all kinds of money. I could buy most of the places, that the apartment buildings that they want to, rent. But just recently, 2 months ago, for the first time since I've been home, I was able to rent a townhouse. Finally, now, 6 years later, I can rent my own place. Before, I had a sublet from a friend who put their name on a lease so I could get in the door. As Richard talked about, the stigma of coming home, hits everybody, no matter, the mistake you made up for that mistake, you did your time, you're moving on to the next step. That stigma affects you no matter who you are, where you're at, and what you're doing.
Yes, Bill, congratulations. But as you mentioned too, it's disappointing that it would take that long for that to happen. Thank you. Let me move on. Tommy, let me draw you into the conversation. And I know one of the things we've talked about, I think all of us in this work have talked about all the time, is you sometimes you have to prepare people for opportunity. And one of the things I like about Jumpstart is you sort of walk alongside people for the continuum of their incarceration back into a community. And so could you talk just a little bit about some of that preparation work that needs to take place maybe prior to release?
Absolutely, Mike. And again, thank you, like the others have said, for inviting us on here today. Let me begin by apologizing. If you hear what sounds like construction work, we have waited 3 weeks for a contractor, and he showed up today, unannounced. So I apologize. Reba, it's not my fault. Anyway, it does begin on the inside.
I'm impressed that he showed up at all, Tommy. Congratulations. You're doing better than me.
That's why we didn't send him away. But in all seriousness, Jumpstart was literally started by 4 inmates who would interview guys that would get out and come back, get out and come back. And the 4 things they would hear from these guys were, I couldn't find a job, I couldn't find a place to live, my family has rejected me, and I don't know a different way of life. So those 4 inmates began to experiment with programming that was focused on reentry preparation. So we have our roots in reality. This was not created by a sociologist or somebody from the outside. This program was created by 4 men living it. Now, eventually all 4 of those guys did get out, and they carried that passion forward. So I was on a call the other day, Mike, with one of your chaplains, Chaplain Engel. He didn't even know who Jumpstart was. He didn't know anything about what we did, but he was shocked when he learned that we have a program that starts for 40 weeks, literally focusing on those 4 key elements. And so we know from experience that, and one of the things he said is, in Ohio, reentry is everyone's job. Now, I'm talking to state directors all over the country, and I can promise you that is not a common thinking. That is not common understanding. So the fact that the Ohio Department of Corrections sees reentry as everybody's job would understand and appreciate that reentry begins literally the day somebody steps into prison. I did not go, could have, but I didn't go. But I know from too many stories and too many personal interviews, when someone waits until the day after they've been released to start working on their reentry, it's too late. Too many factors are coming at you too fast. So those 4 questions: where am I going to work? Well, you've got time to find communities that will have jobs. Where am I going to live? Networking through friends and family. How am I going to be supported? Find a local church. Have I learned how to live life differently? Work through the programs that are available for the ODRC. So reentry doesn't begin the day of release. Reentry begins the day of incarceration. That's our experience.
All right, Tommy, thank you. And let me just really, I guess, guys, I have to apologize. I started with this script, and I'm just now we're just throwing the script to the wind. I'm gonna do this 60-minute style. Let me just ask you guys, and Brian, I'll ask you to lead off. You all are in this business. You all are creating these safe spaces for people to return to. How do we build momentum within the community to make this a priority? You've talked about the challenges of stigma. We talked about some of maybe the exclusions or cautionary measures used by housing providers. But how do we build the momentum to make this priority in our communities? Brian, let's start with you.
Thank you, Mike. I tell you what, you're doing it right now by the fact that we're having this conversation, and the fact that Reba and her whole entourage has put this together, and we've had just incredible, phenomenal support. And I will tell you, even though we've been in this business for a long time, we've only been in the reentry space for probably about the last year. And I cannot tell you what phenomenal support we have gotten from everybody, from Ronnie Burks-Trousdale and Roxanne Coey at ODRC, and Zach and Wendy and all the folks over at Arch, and so many other people I can't even name right now. That is what has inspired and motivated us. And I will tell you, we need to have a paradigm shift right now. We're in a time, the last several years has shown the light on many different challenges that we have in society that have been kind of swept under the rug for a long time. There are many groups and many movements out there that are trying to draw attention to the social challenges and the economic challenges that we have. And the reentering citizen population is one of those populations, but it's a population nobody wants to deal with. As this panelist has identified, when we have folks that have paid a price, especially in Bill's case, he paid whatever, his sentence was, he paid a price and he came out, but you know what, he's still being charged interest for 6 years. Yeah. When society said, this is what we feel the price is, but that's not true. That's a lie. That price keeps getting extracted week after week, month after month, year after year. And those of us in the housing community and in the employment community need to start changing our paradigm. And that's what I'm doing in our business, in our company. And that's what we're doing. And we have an outreach program, and with Roxanne and Ronnie, I've been working with them extensively. We've been traveling around the state, going to different facilities. We were most recently up at Edna House in Cleveland, which is a well-known facility for women that we're learning different ideas and strategies from. And this has to change. Attitudes have to change. And we're doing that one housing provider at a time. And I think that society as a whole is starting to recognize we have a lot of disparities. We have a lot of challenges among different populations. And now is the time. What we're doing right here, right now, today, for these 2 days, this is the kind of message that needs to continue to get out. We need to have the Columbus Dispatch. We need to have a Channel 4 and 6 on your side, and these folks seeing the kind of results that we're having and the successes that we're having with this, because the solutions are out there. And I know, I will tell you, as a housing provider, it is very, very difficult. It's very, very challenging managing residents and expectations and trying to keep our costs down and our rent down in the environment that we have right now. When you add to that the fact that there's an artificial challenge because of this thing called a criminal background that makes it even more difficult, it's almost an impossible situation. But the solutions are there, and the challenges are big and they're huge, but they can be overcome. And I think these meetings and what we're doing right now to change the stigmas and the stereotyping that we have is where we need to begin.
Hey, Brian, thank you. Do you guys remember the movie Jaws? And you remember they were out there and they encountered the shark, and they said, we're going to need a bigger boat. So we're going to need more time. This is a phenomenal panel discussion, and I appreciate this opportunity to engage at this level. Bill, let me ask you that same question. How do we build momentum for this to become priority in the community?
I'm really glad you asked me this question, because we got some really good updates on it. So, in our perspective, obviously, Richard talked about this, Brian talked about this. We need to change the national awareness of reentry, coming home, housing, all that kind of stuff. But it also has to be a commitment, not just an awareness, but it has to be a commitment to it. So kind of where we've gone with this. So it's kind of funny, you know, Brian knows Ronnie. So Ronnie Burks, the Deputy Director of Reentry for ODRC, Department of Corrections in Ohio. He and I we were on a call one day waiting for a Zoom call to start, and we started talking. It wasn't even about housing. We started talking about housing and how difficult it is to get people housing. And we're like, you know what, why don't we do something about this? And so we kind of looked into it a little bit, and Roxanne, you know, Kobe, her right hand with everything, kind of started sending us different projects and initiatives of reentry housing that people were working on. And so I'm reading through all these different initiatives, and I'm thinking to myself, all we're doing is throwing stuff against the wall, saying, well, if we do this, will you rent to return citizens? Or if we do this, will you open up your doors? But I thought to myself, nobody's ever asking them what they want. So this is Brian's world. Nobody ever asked them, what do they want? What assurances do they want in order to open their doors to return citizens? So we started a whole initiative with, you know, Ronnie, Roxanne, Bio Barworth's been involved, Erica Bradley now is involved, all with ODRC. And we brought in Senator Sherrod Brown, because Senator Sherrod Brown in Ohio is the chairman of the Housing, Budget, and Urban Affairs Committee in Washington. He said, Bill, this is a big piece of what I want to do. So we brought him into this, and we started having town halls with agencies all around Ohio. It wasn't, and Brian knows this, it wasn't the lower level housing initiatives, because I know I can put people in there and you can get a place in low income housing. I wanted the upper echelons. So these are the people that, you know, the $2,000-3,000 a month rents. Now, are you going to come home to prison with that? No, you're not. But if I can go after the big boys and we can get their assurances of what they would want, it's going to filter downhill. And so we went down that road, and we had a couple of different town halls. And the last one was very interesting, because we actually, I was able to connect with a gentleman out of Cincinnati who happens to be the chairman of the National Apartment Association. And I'm sure Brian probably knows Don Bruner pretty well. So Don and I become friends, and I got him involved in this and his whole organization in this. And that last town hall, we had his group there that represented over 500,000 properties in Ohio, which was huge, and asked them, what do you want? So we were able to kind of look within that and see, what do you really want in order to make these assurances for coming home, and how we can work together, but also how can we build something that you're going to commit to? So if you're going to commit to this from the National Apartment Association, and you're going to bring this into your bylaws as far as how you're going to work with all your apartments, and then hopefully, you know, we can take this to a national level through Washington. Yeah. We can make this difference. So we need the buy-in at the highest level that we can then work down and get that commitment from the industry that we will accept this. And it was kind of interesting, because the last town hall, we asked them what the assurances were, and two things stood out that they really had concerns about, which I didn't think was going to be, you know, their biggest concerns at all. The first one was, are you supported coming home? Did you go through any kind of a training process or any kind of, work with the support system inside? Like Tommy and I both know of all the different programs we run inside the prisons. Are you worked with from a training standpoint inside? And then the second piece is, as Brian talked about, who is going to be hanging around your place? So what kind of friends are going to be coming around your place that my neighbor is going to be like, hey, you know, I got some strange people coming in this door next door to me all the time. So that was their two biggest concerns: is, are you supported coming home, that you're going to know what you're walking into, that you're going to know how to act and take care of things, pay the rent, you know, take care of the property, all that kind of stuff, which wasn't their biggest concern, which I thought it would be. It was more of, who is going to be around your area. So if we make that caution to people and say, you know, this has got to be your place and only your place. If you want a good start in the right place, then you got to own this thing yourself. So we're in the middle of this right now, and we're kind of presenting, you know, they have what's called a CQE, which is a certificate of employment. We're now create a CQH, which is for housing, and we give the same benefits to, you know, the leasing people as well. And we're trying to take this into a national level, that this becomes hopefully a House bill that we can take to the country.
Fantastic, Bill. Fantastic overview. I appreciate it. And it sounds like you've kind of taken from the story out of the book of Exodus. You've gone back to Pharaoh, not dealing with his emissaries, but you've gone straight to Pharaoh to address these issues. And let me just, to tie this question up, Rick, I'm going to ask you, and then we'll conclude, Tommy, with a little bit of that national perspective you may have, and sharing with us what what has worked for you. But Rick, let me ask you, you're there in Akron. And so how do you get people, as our other two speakers have alluded to, some of those strategies, how do you get people to make housing a priority for those who are returning home? What have you guys done, and what do you believe we need to do? Oh, unmute yourself.
First of all, I wanted to just give a little optimism. I believe with great difficulty comes great change, right? And I believe during the opiate crisis, a lot of eyes were open to a lot of different things, right? And I believe if it wasn't for COVID, we would have done this 3 years ago, what we're doing right now, at the time of that at the time of the height of the opiate crisis, because a lot of the heartland of America was hit by it, right? And so you're seeing a lot of your family members going into the justice system, and not 90% of everyone that's incarcerated has a drug issue. I just want to, let that be known, right? Has some type of drug issue. And if it's not the drugs themselves, then it's the lifestyle of the drugs, right? Because you can be just as addicted to the lifestyle of drugs because you don't know anything else, coming from a lot of the inner city, or if you just come from the suburbs or whatever and got caught in that drug infection. But I believe that that we're in a process, like Brian was saying, it's starting right now. It's starting right now with these type of building bridges experiences, with all of us networking, getting to know each other, finding different resources that some of us may not know. Also, to continue what we're doing. We say in the streets, put your money where your mouth is. So continue doing, just don't talk it, continue to walk the walk. So that means continue to meet with each other, continue to network, continue to educate. It starts with our family members. Let's educate them, and they can spread the word. So educating the city, and I agree also with Bill that it starts at the top. Our mayor here in Summit County, we can start with him and then work our way down here in Summit County, and being available to help with the change in our community. We believe at TRI that we're help building our community one man at a time. So that's what it's about, building that one man at a time, helping that one man, and hopefully he'll be an example to his family and build the community up in a better way.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. This is such rich discussion. Bill and Brian, next time you guys are on a conference call, you got to include me too. Tommy, I want to turn to you, and could you kind of wrap this up for us and share some of your experiences? What works to make this priority in community? And Tommy, I guess I do want to put you on the spot. I mean, you guys have created down in the Carolinas a housing complex that's the envy of everybody I know who becomes familiarized with it. Share with us a little bit about what you guys have found to work.
Absolutely, Mike. Let me give a couple numbers. So far, more than 5,000 currently and formerly incarcerated have participated in Jumpstart on the inside. 3,600 over the 13 years history of our organization have gotten out. Less than 4% have returned, for a 96% success rate. So that success rate opens the door to a lot of communities. So here's what works. We're gonna go from 50,000 feet down to 50 feet. Several years ago, we recognized this is a much bigger task than we can do on our own. So in our first community meeting, we started a once a month community meeting, which was our staff. And at that very first meeting, it was us and 2 members of parole, probation, and pardon. We call them Triple P in South Carolina. That's the only 2 people that showed up. And that led to discussion about the need for mental health assistance. So the next month, we invited our community head of Department of Mental Health, and he came. The 4th meeting, we realized we needed health care. So somebody from our local hospital came. Fast forward to today, and over 30 community partners gather once a month, And we talk name by name of everybody who's in our program in South Carolina who needs assistance. So it goes all the way back up to your question, Mike. How do you build momentum? You have to tactically get the people involved. And so we now meet every month with a variety of resources so that we can offer that full continuum of care. So now to your question, what I see in other states. If I had to rank on a reentry basis, I would rank Ohio #1, South Carolina #2, and then everybody else sort of stacks up under that. Because as a state, Ohio has learned, is learning, but has learned that the real key to success is focus on reentry. Those community partners, think about it this way. When we invited the person from the local hospital, she was scared to death to come in our office because almost our entire staff are formerly incarcerated. Me and one other person out of 7 people are the only 2 that weren't. And she said, just knowing she was going to a meeting with formerly incarcerated had her scared out of her mind. And after she met our folks, she was like, oh my gosh, I have found a place I want to call home. And so she is an advocate for us with the president of the local hospital, with doctors, with providers. So that momentum that you've asked about gets built literally community partner by community partner. And it's hard for these community partners to turn away. As Brian experienced, once you see what's possible, it's not easy just to turn and walk away and go, I don't want to be a part of this. So I would encourage anyone who's a part of this presentation, say, how do I get directly involved as a community partner? Not just talk about it. And everyone has the ability to be a part of this. So it's, for us, strategically, it starts at the community level, Mike.
Okay. Tommy, thank you. This has been fantastic. And I have a whole bunch of questions actually, guys, but I know we have limited time, but something was said earlier about stigma. And Bill, you talked about some of the technical things we have to resolve the challenges of housing, the CQH and the building of that tool. But talk to me a little bit, how do we sort of diffuse the impact of bias and stigma and really the overall bias we have against those who are returning to community? Rick, we'll start with you, and then whoever wants to jump in then can do so. How do we do that? How do we address the stigma associated with incarceration?
Sorry about that. Number one is educating our community, having a good neighbors policy. One of the things that we like to do is let our neighbors know that we're coming. We may do Thanksgiving baskets and do the whole community, that whole part of the community we're putting a house in, that whole street right there, neighborhood. Also, I need to take responsibility, right? I need to show that those stigmas are not true. So me as a person coming from the inside, I need to stand up and I need to be follow the rules and the laws of the land and try to be a contributor to my neighborhood, showing that I am a good father, that I'm a good coworker, a good, just all the things that shows the totally different and walking in the opposite direction of what I used to walk in, right? And a lot of times that takes some humility on myself because I have to learn skills that I didn't learn before. I had to learn how to be and stretch myself and go into a place that's uncomfortable for me. But I had to be willing to learn from others and continue to learn and never be closed-minded. And I hope the society itself will learn not to be closed-minded by watching the actions of men like me and Bill there and see that change is possible, right?
Good deal. Good deal. Hey, whoever else would like to jump on in, go right ahead. Go ahead, Bill.
I'd like to answer that. I think Brian answered it a long time ago with his whole story about giving somebody a chance and realizing that, hey, this guy was a really good renter. It's successes. I mean, you get rid of a stigma by showing people successes that, you know what, this is successful. We see it. We have a massive reentry workforce initiative that we run. And we have companies now that are realizing, you know what, hiring returning citizens is tremendous. They're committed, they're dedicated, they want to grow. So, just like they're now accepting reentry in the workforce area, they can do that the same way in the housing area by showing successes, giving the people the chance, having them go through, the trainings and the support. And the support's a big piece. And Tommy talked about that. We run Inside Out program, we run all kinds of programs, but it's got to be holistic. I mean, we can't just concentrate on education and workforce. We got to know mental health's a piece of it, substance abuse a piece of it. I mean, there's 23 barriers we address with them before they even walk out the door. And then we continue with them when they walk out the door. And there's not a lot of programs that actually do that. It's either inside or outside, but very few, as Tommy knows, very few that do the whole thing. And once you have that, and once you start seeing successes, it changes the dynamic of a lot of people saying, well, you know what, maybe I should give that one a chance. Maybe I can't find people to rent my places. And I know a whole population, like I had a congressman say to me is, Bill, 20,000 people coming home from prison every year in Ohio. I wonder if they could go to work. I'm like, well, yeah, that's exactly what they want to do is go to work, and Annette Chambers Smith has been a big driver of putting those kind of initiatives together, and to the point of, our recidivism rate, with the 1,000+ people we worked with is 1.4%, because we have that holistic approach to be able to help people with what they can do. We built a whole career passion development program on something they can fight for in their life that they never even thought about. But let's give you something to fight for, because if you don't have something to fight for, you're gonna go back to making $3,000 an hour on a street corner. So, when you get rid of a stigma, it's got to be done by successes. That's the only way that people are going to start seeing, okay, you can tell me all the stuff in the world, but if I don't see it, I'm not going to believe it. I'm not going to think the stigma changed, but you show me that it changes, then I'll buy into it.
Yeah, I think we have to do as participants in events like this, we have to sort of do what the church is called to do, and that's gather and then scatter and sort of share the word, share successes. Brian, I'm going to call. I remember Peyton Manning. We played quarterback. He'd say Omaha, Omaha. That was an audible, and so we're gonna run a different play. Brian, I want to ask you this because I think it's important, because we have to sort of cast our gaze down the road and look at the landscape of the housing situation 5-10 years from now. What does your look into the crystal ball tell you about opportunities down the road for our returning neighbors?
Well, Mike, that's a great question. And unfortunately, my crystal ball is in the shop this week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the best prognostication I can based on my experience. Okay, I'm going to look into the history, into the past to predict the future. Yeah. I will tell you something. It is challenging as our economic times are, our social times, our political times. I am very optimistic. I'm very bright. I have a very bright vision for the future because of the work that everyone here is doing. I mean, I'm just amazed at what Bill and his team have been able to do with getting Sherrod Brown and legislators involved. Even here in Columbus, I'll tell you, we've been, Jody and I, my wife, have been to city council meetings. We've met representatives. We've had member Rob Dorans, who's a member of Columbus City Council, has reached out on our behalf to connect us with people. We've met with Mayor Ginther, and I think the future is very bright. And I'll tell you why. Because we have a window right now. I don't think there could be a better time. Everything, all the challenges that we have, and the presenter earlier today said, within every difficulty lies the seed of an equivalent or greater opportunity. And right now, the time is ours to take advantage of that. We have a society that's willing and open to looking at new ideas, having their perspectives changed for the better. And I love the fact that there is such, especially here in Ohio, and I'm so blessed with everybody that's here, not just the panel and the people in this group, but the ecosystem that exists in Columbus and throughout the state. So I'm very optimistic, and I think what's going to happen is I think you're going to see more and more efforts. I have friends up in the Akron-Canton area, up in your neck of the woods, Richard, Doug and April Stern, that are doing some super good things and powerful things up there with housing for not just justice involved, but other vulnerable populations. And I think this is a movement. I think we're going to capitalize on this. And I think my crystal ball has us as a community getting out there and spreading the word. I'm a sales and marketing guy, and I'm in the process of writing a book right now that's going to explain that paradigm shift and why we have not just new opportunities, but new responsibilities as housing providers. And those responsibilities aren't just for social good, it's for the good of our pocketbook too.
Yeah.
It's a win-win situation for all stakeholders and all interested parties. And I think the future is very bright. I don't know how you can stop a group of people that REBA has put together, that ODNR has put together, that Bill is putting together, that Doug and April Stern and Akron's putting together, that Rick and Tommy and yourself, Mike, and what we're doing, Jody and I are doing in Columbus. This is it's the right place at the right time for this.
Right.
And I think that as attitudes are changing, people are going to see their outdated stereotypes and myths that they have and stigmas. I think they're going to dissipate over time. We have a lot of work to do. It's not going to be easy, but I see a very bright, very optimistic future. And all we have to do, the people on this phone call and in this organization and in this ecosystem, we just have to keep fighting the good fight. That's it.
That's right. Oh, Brian, I tell you, I'm ready to go. Put me in, coach. I'm ready to go. We have a question. Bill, I want to ask you if you would answer this. How do folks working locally, say in grassroots organizations, grassroots faith-based organizations specifically, how do they begin a working relationship with you in your organization?
I mean, that's an easy one. Call us. I mean, bottom line is, it's one of the things that we learned very quickly is collaboration is the best way for success. The more people you can get together. I was at it was actually a prayer breakfast a couple weeks ago with a whole bunch of religious community organizations in Elyria, Ohio, with the mayor, and he kicked the whole thing off as well. And all they talked about was reentry. How can we combine forces to put together a reentry initiative and and help the families as well as the incarcerated, with this return and not only and on victims as well. How can we reach out? As a faith-based community, it's a great way to do it because they trust you. Every single person we work with, our number one goal is to earn their trust. Because if we don't earn their trust, then we're never going to be able to accomplish everything. So I think the faith-based community already has that trust. Collaboration is massive. You guys have a leg up on a lot of people because of that trust. Like Tommy said, having, staff that's formerly incarcerated, our entire staff in our division of reentry as a background, everybody, because that relatability is massive. But the churches can play a big role in it. If they want to collaborate, just call us. Call us, email us, and we'll find a way to create and bring you into either an initiative that we're currently running on, or if we need to in a certain area, we'll build a new one because there's coalitions that ODRC has set up that already have those resources, and we can build on those that are already set up.
All right, Bill, thank you. And I just want to echo the sentiments of Doug, who commented, hey, we need to tell our story over and over and over, and that momentum builds. And it's one thing for a representative of a correctional agency to say it, but when you say it from the community, it just means so much more and has so much more weight, Bill, because of what you said, that lived experience and that particular perspective. Tommy, I want to ask you
You froze on us, Mike.
Hey, Mike, we don't have a connection to you.
If you'd given me just one more word, I'd know what the question was going to be.
This is your chance. Make up your question.
Well, I'll interrupt whatever I'm answering when he comes back. He mentioned us starting a new community. So from the research we've done, we have started the first of its kind in the entire country, a turnkey subdivision, 22 homes, an opportunity center. If you were to drive into it, it's got landscaping and street lights. It looks like Bill, you made a huge point. It's not low end. It's not affordable housing. This is a nice community. And to watch folks get out of a vehicle and know this this is where I'm going to go live. I mean, it is priceless. And
It's huge.
you know, I've heard people say we couldn't do anything like this. There's nothing special about us. We kicked the tires until we found land, and we went out and raised money. It's been heavy lifting. All right, Mike, you back. So I'm gonna stop living.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. I'm not gonna be defeated today, by golly. If I have to drive up to Akron right now, we're gonna finish this. So Tommy, I just wanted to ask you, you came to us, we're in partnership. What do you do to engage leaders of correctional agencies and other key partners to build momentum toward effectively providing housing for our neighbors?
I'm gonna broaden that question just a little bit beyond just housing, but it's a great question because it's part of our early process. Before we got started, Bill and I were talking about Todd Ishii. Todd just is accepted a different role in South Carolina and North Carolina. But when we met with Todd, he asked that very question. He said, "What do you need of us?" And this is not a trivial or trite answer. I said, "Commissioner Ishii, we just need you to not be obstructionist. Just don't get in the way. Let us, you know, we're gonna see ourselves as guests in your home." You've heard me use that language before, Mike, with our volunteers. We are guests in your house. We are respectful of the chaplain and the warden, but don't make our work difficult. You know, if we go to class, make sure there's enough chairs. If we've asked, can we have a meal for graduation? Make that possible. So it really is. My heart is so heavy. Alabama operates with a 70% vacancy of correctional officers. You have facilities with 2,000 inmates with 2 ladies on a Sunday night covering the whole facility. So the work is hard enough without us encumbering the work and making it even harder. So let us operate as guests. Let us serve you, and trust that we're the experts in this. Look to us for guidance and then work collaboratively. I can't say enough. Ronnie's been mentioned several times. Bernice has been mentioned. You've been mentioned. You guys in my world and the multiple states I'm in, you set the gold standard for what I wish everybody operated like. And so don't be obstructionists. Let us do what we do and let us do it well.
Tommy, thank you very much. That's very valuable, as all the remarks have been today. So let me, we're getting close to, I believe, close to our time, but let me just remind those in our listening audience and at the sites, you can connect with these experts through the Hoover platform. They've invited you to do that. I heard Bill say, we can roll back the tape. He said, hey, call me, email me. And I know that's true of all of them. But one of the things I think I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up to get your perspective on this, and Richard, I'm going to start with you on this, is talk to me, and I heard you say a little earlier about the opioid pandemic opening some eyes because middle America was starting to go to prison. And I know that's code word for overabundance of white men and women going to prison and people being more in tune with what's going on versus what was happening during the crack epidemic. And so I wanted to just ask, as it relates to that, does that make it more difficult? Does racialized or gender bias make housing more difficult? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it makes it more difficult. It always has. But I think even that is, getting better now. I think it was Brian or Bill, and they were talking about buying homes, right? Because at Tribe, we believe that we don't put a ceiling on stable housing. The end goal is the American dream. It's for all of us to become homeowners, right? So I've recently become a homeowner. And then the man that comes after me, we're hoping he becomes a homeowner, and so on and so on. So not putting a cap on that. And it starts with that holistic approach that Bill was talking about and getting credit and finances together, because money has no color. right? And if you can afford to buy a house, you can afford to buy a house. You can have one built or however you want to, do it. And a lot of people that go in don't have credit, period, black or white. A lot of them don't even have credit. So you can start right there building your credit and then buy whatever home you want in the neighborhood that you want, as long, some gated communities may not let you in because of, color or gender or whatever, that's just sometimes what they do. But, far as I do believe that America is getting better when it comes to those things. I think it was a wake-up call. The opiate epidemic was a wake-up call, because if the things that are in place now with drug courts and peer support that's inside institutions now, and all of those things were in place put in place during the crack epidemic, it wouldn't have got so bad in the opiate epidemic if it was already put in place. Right. But it wasn't. In hindsight, that's okay. But it's there now. So it's here now. So let's work it the best of our ability right now. So if it ever happens again, we'll be prepared for
All
it.
right. All right, Rick, thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else want to weigh in on that at all? Because I got some more questions. We have about 4 minutes left. Let me just ask you this then, and this is for everybody. I'd like for everybody to take a crack at this. What are 2 things we need to do? You guys are doing it, you're living it, you're leading in this area at the highest levels. You all shared that. What are 2 things that a person like me can do, the other attendees in this workshop, in this community experience? What are 2 things that we can go back into our communities and do to build momentum to address this issue? Brian, I'll start with you.
When you say address this issue, you're just talking about the housing issue.
Housing, whatever else that is tangent to that we need to throw in. What do we need?
Well, as a housing provider, I can talk to that, and I think Bill and Rick and Tommy have some additional perspectives. But I'll say this much, that I think the tide is turning, and what I need as a housing provider, I need confidence that I am able to manage my risk. That is why, and Bill touched on this too, that is the number one reason of why my friends and colleagues and the people I've interviewed for my book and that I've talked to, even in casual conversation and networking events. Right now, I hate to say this, but the housing providers are in the driver's seat. Housing is very scarce. Rents are going up through the roof right now. Most of the people that I know that have properties, they have a waiting list for people to get in. And naturally, any business person is going to want to have the most qualified person in their property, best credit score, longest time on the job, highest income, that sort of a thing. So even after taking the justice involved component out, it's still very competitive just to rent an apartment. When you add the justice involved component in there, that makes an already difficult situation that much worse. What we as a community have to do is we have to recognize the fact that we are in challenging times right now, and we have to. There's got to be a public-private partnership, collaboration, coalition, if you want to call it that, between all of the interested parties. And I think the housing providers finally need a seat at the table. Faith-based, the nonprofit sector and government sector, they've always talked about this, but the housing provider community has not had as much input on this as would probably be required, because all stakeholders have to have, there's got to be a win-win for everybody that's involved. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's the housing providers that control the inventory and the stock. And I think that with changing attitudes, the number one thing that I'm finding is convincing my friends to be welcoming of justice involved is have some kind of a safety net, some kind of assurance that, yeah, I'll give a fair chance to some of your residents, Brian, that you don't have enough housing for, as long as I know I'm not going to end up on the short end of the stick where I'm not. And if I do end up, if there's some kind of a problem, there's a safety net there. That's what I think would turn the tide significantly and turn it quickly, if we could give housing providers some kind of assurance that the risk is being managed and being mitigated.
All right. Hey, gentlemen, this takes us up to our time limit. This is, I think, a great way to end. I just want to encourage those who have been listening in to contact these men. They're subject matter experts, and as you've heard, they're pretty nice guys too, and a handsome group. Check out Jumpstart, check out Try, Aubrey Housing, and Reach Success. Hey guys, these are some of the leaders that are guiding us and helping us address the issue, the pressing issue of housing for our neighbors. Thank you, panelists. We applaud you and thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Have a great afternoon. Take
Thank you,
care,
everyone.
everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Honored to be with you guys today.
Yeah.
Let me know if I can do anything to help.
Yeah, same here.
All right.
Yeah, I'll
Take
definitely
care.
be reaching out. You guys are an inspiration. Thanks. Especially since we're so new. We're the kind of the new kids on the block. To hear, like Tommy, you've been doing this for 13 years. You're our hero,
Well,
you know, to be doing it for so long, and we appreciate that. And I'll definitely be reaching out to you in the days ahead to get your ideas and perspective on some things that we're doing here in Columbus. And thank you for the hard work that you do. And for you too, Rick and Mike, thanks for hosting this.
Yep.
And I'm definitely going to be reaching out to Bill too.
very good. Thanks, Mike.
Hey, take care, everybody.
See you on the 19th at graduation. Don't forget.
Yeah. All right. Take care, everybody.